Yes, hi, welcome to this video. Yeah, it's kind of late in the night, but wasn't doing too much sleep, but yeah, doing too much sleep. But yeah, I wanted to do a little bit of recording, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Yeah, so last time I talked about where I started, my research plan, okay, and how I was fascinated with the UC Berkeley experimental setup and wanted to learn a lot from Prof. Peterson. Okay, so yeah, let me talk about number 4 especially, and then maybe I can look into research because that's where I wanted to start. So yeah, then we can talk about CIET, okay, because I talked about I wanted to learn. I talked about wanting to learn as much as possible, wanted to simulate reactors, but I also wanted to work with Professor Peterson on the compact integral effects test. Now, where does this interest for compact integral effects start from? Okay, last time we talked about the uh, Kirk Sorensen's presentation on the molten salt reactor, or specifically the liquid fluoride thorium reactor. Okay, this is what really inspired me. A so-called a reactor that could prevent Fukushima from ever happening again. Okay, so this uses a liquid molten salt. Okay, molten salt as the fuel and the coolant. Okay, so if this is the reactor, the molten salt will circulate in and out of the core, and it will generate heat in this reactor. Okay, so within this molten salt, you will have uranium fluoride, UF4, plus it will be mixed into a mixture of what we call flibe. Okay, this flibe is a eutectic mixture of lithium fluoride, beryllium fluoride. Okay, so this is what flibe is. This is uranium tetrafluoride. And of course, somewhere in there, there'll be thorium fluoride. Thorium fluoride. I can't remember what the oxidation state was. Okay, and this will then absorb a neutron. Okay, this is thorium 232. You absorb a neutron to become thorium 233. And it becomes protactinium 233 by beta minus decay. And then it finally becomes uranium 233. And this is quite suitable for nuclear reactions, fission reactions specifically. Yeah. So it's because of this I got interested in the fluoride salt-cooled high-temperature reactor. So the fluoride salt-cooled high-temperature reactor is slightly different from this liquid molten salt reactor design. Okay, fluoride salt-cooled high-temperature reactor is basically using a pebble bed. Okay, so you have a bed of pebbles. Okay, a bed of pebbles with uranium inside. Okay, and these pebbles will contain uranium encapsulated in what we call triso fuel. Okay, this is commonly used in the high temperature gas-cooled reactor, HTGR. Okay, these pebbles in the HTGR, they are normally cooled by helium gas. But in the FHR, fluoride salt cooled high temperature reactor, they are instead cooled by the same molten salt, flibe. Okay, so this flibe will carry away heat from the core, use it to generate steam, and that one we can talk about it another time. Okay, but what goes on in the main part of the nuclear reactor is that the flibe will cool these pebbles, extract heat from these pebbles. They will do other things to the neutrons as well to slow them down. We call it moderation. Okay, but one of the most important purposes is to extract heat from the core. Okay. Now, as compared to the liquid fuel molten salt reactor, okay, this triso fuel, okay, uranium triso fuel is not meant exactly to do what we call breeding. This is called breeding. So what it's here to do is to convert thorium, natural thorium into a nuclear fuel, which is this uranium-233, which then can be used in as the fuel for the reactor, in this liquid fluoride thorium reactor. Okay, all this fuel is liquid, whereas over here the fuel is in a solid form. And for the FHR, the objective here is not necessarily to breed fuel using these thorium pebbles. Okay, they may not be. Okay, and at least the philosophy of this FHR is that you make one major technological innovation at a time. So the major technological innovation is switching from this HTGR, which uses helium fuel, and then you want to switch it around to flight. Okay, now that has a lot of implications, especially safety implications, because flight happens to be a very good trap for fission products. Okay, however, there is some concern that it can be used to breed tritium as well. Okay, tritium is this hydrogen-3, and this is a radioactive hydrogen, which is commonly used for fuel inside the fusion reactor. Okay, but this is what the FHR does. Okay, there are some safety implications because helium doesn't trap fission products as well as flight. So flight acts as an extra barrier between this triso and the surroundings. Extra barrier between all the radioactive stuff inside the triso and the surroundings. So this is a molten salt solid fuel reactor. And this came around the early 2010s, maybe early 2011s. I cannot remember the exact date. Okay, but this FHR is a slightly easier, I suppose, technologically easier reactor to implement because it doesn't involve this breeding process, and it doesn't involve the refining process that you need to extract all the nasty fission products right out of this liquid fluoride thorium reactor. So this liquid fluoride thorium reactor is two things in one. It is a nuclear reactor that produces heat, but it's also a refinery plant. It's a waste processing plant where you're supposed to extract nuclear waste right from the fluoride salt stream. Okay, and then it's supposed to process it on site. So that itself may be a bit of a challenge as well. Okay, whereas with this solid fuel reactor, you don't really do any of this fuel reprocessing step, which makes the this reactor perhaps slightly easier to license, okay, or somewhat easier to license. And this is now done by Kairos Power. So you can look at their website online, but I'm just going to talk about the technology and not really the company as much. Though that's where Professor Peterson and a lot of students actually went. And in fact, the founder of Kairos Power, Ed Blanford, Dr. Ed Blanford, he is also one of Professor Peterson's ex-students. So they're very successful. Okay. So this is the FHR where I started. Okay. So for the FHR, you need a lot of testing. Okay. So before you can build the FHR, you need to build a lot of test loops to assure the regulatory bodies that there is indeed a level of safety. So you need a lot of safety guarantees before you can license. Okay, you need a lot of safety guarantees before you can license. So before that, before you can even build a commercial FHR, you need to build a test reactor first. Okay, a test reactor. Okay, but can you just build a test reactor like that? Okay, can you just build a test reactor like that? There are going to be lots of safety issues, okay, which you may not want to just build a test reactor off the bat like that. Assemble nuclear fuel together, put the flight salt together. There may be safety issues, there may be operational issues. Okay, because in the US, no one has done, at least at the early 2010s, no one has done a molten salt loop in a very, very long time. So there are questions about how the salt will interact with the pebbles or with the metal structures, so on and so forth. So you have a lot of molten salt problems. Okay, there's a lot of molten salt problems. Okay, so maybe we just have a test loop. Okay, there's some molten salt problems, and then there's also the nuclear component, which is there's radioactivity and other safety issues involved. So even before the test reactor, you probably have a test loop. We call it a thermohydraulics test loop. And maybe you just have a electrical heater. And then you pump molten salt. You pump the fluid through here. You pump the fluid through the heater so that you can understand how molten salt reacts and behaves with the structures and everything, the corrosion, so on and so forth, all the other problems with the pumps. Okay, you want to do that before introducing this extra hurdle, this extra level of complication. So even before you build a test reactor, you might want to build test loops. Now, even so, this flight is it has a beryllium toxicity, and it operates at around 600 to 700 degrees C. Okay, not an ideal place to start. If you want to build this, you have to build a lab with a lot of safety, a lot of safety features. So even before that, you may want to use a fluid that's a little bit less complicated than flight. We call this a simulant fluid or surrogate fluid. Okay, simulant fluid. Okay, and the idea is that you want to, you probably say that, maybe you could use water to simulate flight because both of them are liquids, but that's not what we did. Or maybe, okay, so the idea behind this surrogate fluid or simulant fluid is that you don't want to deal with these problems like the high temperature or the beryllium toxicity, and you want to use a simpler fluid to simulate the flight. So there was this search for a surrogate or simulant fluid to build a scale model of this test loop or a scale model of this test reactor before you even start dealing with all these complications like the molten salt, the nuclear part. Okay, so you want to use a simulant fluid to build scale models. Scale models. Okay, and the compact integral effects test, CIET, actually fits in this category. So it uses a simulant fluid, okay, which is a diatom A or terminal VP1. This is a heat transfer oil. So it's a mixture of two oils, a eutectic mixture of two oils, okay, that is used to simulate flight, but it can do so at room temperature, maybe 80 to 110 degrees C. Okay, it can simulate flight pretty well. So you can understand you can understand some of the heat transfer properties of flight and the fluid mechanics properties. We call it thermohydraulics. It simulates some of the thermohydraulics properties of flight, except in that it does it at room temperature at a low toxicity. I mean, this oil is still somewhat toxic, but maybe you don't have to worry about the high temperature or the beryllium toxicity. Okay, so this was why diatom A or terminal VP1 was used in the very early stages. So what was constructed at UC Berkeley by a lot of my seniors was the compact integral effects test. And this is the rationale behind CIET. Okay, this is the rationale behind CIET. Okay, so I think I'll stop here because I think I'm going too long. I think I want to sleep already, but hopefully this gives some background into why I was interested, and it gives a background into where my research is going to start. Okay.